Well, thank you all for coming. Thank everybody on YouTube for joining us. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about thus far? We've been talking about chapter 26, the chapter on the turning of the wheel of Dharma. So this chapter really is by what authority does the thus gone one speak? And so who else but himself, speaking in the third person, could speak of his authority? And that's exactly what's happening. He lists his attributes, he lists characteristics, he lists qualities, he lists accomplishments, and the activities of a thus gone one. And then he is certainly a thus gone one. In this chapter, he's constantly being referred to as the thus gone one. So we'll continue. We're on 26, 115. I would like to start one before that, 26.114. So I'd like to ask Brendan, would you read this section, please?
Yes, I will.
All right, I'd like you to read from 114 through 146. So this is the 9th recitation that we've done in this chapter. We've been breaking it up in sections so that we can have a little bit to understand, to talk about. Then we have our discussion and we move on to the next one. So each one of these are very, very good. So Brendan, when you're ready, if you would begin with 114.
26.114. All right. Maitreya, such is the wheel of Dharma, that the thus gone one turns. It is when the thus gone one turns this wheel that he is called a thus gone one. Then he is called a perfectly awakened Buddha, the one who naturally manifests Lord of Dharma, the guide, the perfect guide, the complete guide, the captain, the one with mastery over all dharmas, and the Lord of the Dharma. He is also called the one who turns the wheel of Dharma, the liberal provider of the gift of Dharma, Lord of the offerings, the one who grants offerings perfectly, the one who accomplishes disciplined action, the one who fulfills all aims, the teacher, the one who gives comfort, the hero, and the one who abandons disturbing emotions. He is also known as the one who is conquered in battle, the one who hoists the parasol, the victory flag, and the banner, the one who shines, the radiant one, the one who dispels darkness, the torchbearer, the great king among physicians, the perfect healer, and the great remover of pain. He is the one who sees wisdom perfectly clear, the one who sees all around, the one who looks all around, the one with eyes in all directions, the one who shines in all directions, the one who lights up the world all around, the one who faces all directions, the universal sun, the universal moon, the one beautiful in every way, and the one who never abides and neither accepts nor rejects. He does not feel elated or depressed, and therefore he is known as the one similar to the earth. Since he is unshakable, he is known as like the king of mountains. He is known as the glory of the world because he possesses all the qualities of the world. Since he is clearly superior to the entire world, he is known as the one whose crown cannot be seen. He is called ocean-like because his profundity and depth are hard to fathom. He is called the source of the precious Dharma because he has perfected all the precious teachings that lead to awakening. He is said to be like the wind because he does not rest anywhere. He is known to possess a non-clinging intellect because his mind is non-clinging, unfettered, and liberated. He is called the irreversible Dharma because of his realization that penetrates all phenomena. He is known as the fire-like one because he burns away all disturbing emotions, having given up all pretense. He is like the water because he is purified of evil and always has pure thoughts and stainless body and mind. He is like the sky because he has actualized the wisdom of the realm of phenomena, without center or edge, within the range of non-clinging wisdom. He is known as the one who abides in a liberated state of unobstructed wisdom because he has abandoned all the different obscuring phenomena. He is called the one with a body that issues forth entirely from the realm of phenomena because he transcends the path of space-like vision. He is called the Supreme Being because he has no disturbing emotions caused by worldly objects. He is called the non-clinging being, the one with a limitless intellect, the teacher of the Dharma that transcends the world, the spiritual preceptor of the world, the physician of the world, the most sublime in the world, the one who is not stained by worldly concerns, the protector of the world, the most excellent in the world, the foremost in the world, Lord of the world, the one honored by the world, the ultimate refuge of the world, the one who has gone beyond the world, the light of the world, and the one transcending the world. He is called the master of the world, the one who benefits the world, the one who serves the world, the one who knows the world, the one who has become the regent of the world, the excellent recipient of gifts, the one worthy of offerings, the great field of merit, the great being, the supreme being, the most supreme being, the unexcelled being, the being with no one above, the unequaled being, and the unique being. He is called the one who always rests in equanimity, the one who rests in the equality of all phenomena, the one who has discovered the path, the teacher of the path, the one who shows the path, and the one who genuinely abides on the path. He is called the one who has transcended the domain of Mara, and the one who has conquered the retinue of Mara. Since he is no longer subject to old age and death, he is known as the one who discovered the cool quality. He is the one without darkness, the one without pains, the one without yearnings, the one without disturbing emotions, the one who has eliminated hesitation, the one who has conquered doubt, the one without attachment. The one who is free, the pure one, the one without desire, the one without anger, the one without delusion, the one who has exhausted defilements, the one without disturbing emotions, the one with power, and the one whose mind is utterly free. He is called the one with the realization of a liberated one, the all-knowing one, the great elephant, the one who accomplishes things that need doing, the one who removes the burdens, the one who postpones his own benefit, the one who has exhausted all bonds to existence, and the one who has been freed by the wisdom of equality. He is called the one who has perfected all supreme powers of the mind, the one who has perfected generosity, the most sublime through discipline, the one who has perfected patience, the most sublime through diligence, the one who has discovered higher knowledge through concentration, the one who has perfected knowledge, and the one who has accomplished aspiration. He is called the one who abides in great love, the one who abides in great compassion, the one who abides in great rejoicing, and the one who abides in great equanimity. He is called the one who is diligent in gathering sentient beings, the one who has discovered undimmed awareness of everything, the one who is each and everyone's refuge, the one of great merit, the one possessing great wisdom, and the one with perfect mindfulness, mode of thinking, and intellect. He is known as the one who attained the light because he possesses the branches of awakening, such as the foundations of mindfulness, the authentic illuminations, the basis of miraculous powers, the faculties and the powers, as well as tranquility and insight. He is the one who crossed the ocean of samsara, the one who came to the other shore, the one who has reached dry land, the one who attained peace, the one who found fearlessness, and the one who is unharmed by the thorns of disturbing emotions. He is known as the person, the great person, the lion of a man, the one who is not subject to fear and the thrill of excitement, the elephant, the stainless one, the one who has abandoned the three stains, the knower, the one with the three types of insight, the one who has crossed the four rivers, and the one who has reached the other shore. He is known as the member of the royal class because he is the only one who carries the jewel parasol. He is known as the priest because he abandons misguided religions. He is known as the monk because he smashes the eggshells of ignorance. He is known as the spiritual practitioner because he is genuinely beyond attachment to money and gain. He is conversant with sacred knowledge. He is known as the one whose disturbing emotions have departed. He is called the powerful one, the holder of the 10 powers, the blessed one, the one who has developed physical restraint, the king among kings, the king of Dharma, the one who turns and teaches the sacred and supreme wheel of Dharma, the one who teaches a Dharma that is without strife, and the one who grants consecration into omniscient wisdom. He is the one who is bound with a stainless headband of liberation, great wisdom, and non-attachment. He is the one who possesses the gems of the 7 branches of awakening. He is the one who has actualized all the distinctive qualities of the Dharma. He is the one whose round face is gazed upon by all ministers and noble listeners. He is the one who is surrounded by his sons, the bodhisattvas, the great beings. He is called the one who is exceedingly gentle through discipline, and the one who can easily predict the future awakening of a bodhisattva. He is called the one who is like Vasravana, the one who grants the treasury of the 7 noble riches, the one who sees clearly, the one who has renounced renunciation, the one who is in possession of all perfect kinds of bliss, the one who fulfills all hopes, and the one who sustains the entire world with assistance and happiness. He is said to be like Sakra, holder of the Vajra, of the power of wisdom, and the one with eyes that see all around. He is known as the one who sees all phenomena with unobscured wisdom, the one who is transformed through wisdom in every respect, and the one who displays the great dance of Dharma. He is like the moon, the one that beings never tire of beholding, the one with brilliant light that reaches everywhere, the light that grants friendly disposition and great delight, the light that sees all sentient beings face to face, the one that shines on the minds and thoughts of all beings so that they appear exactly as they are, the great array, and the one surrounded by the stars of those who learn and those who no longer learn. He is called the one like the disk of the sun, and the one who clears away the darkness of delusion. He is the king who holds the great banner. He is limitless and boundless light. He is the one who illumines all with the great light. He is never confused and so clarifies questions and offers predictions. He is called the one who has conquered the great darkness of ignorance. He is called the one who perceives everything with the great light of wisdom. He is the non-conceptual one. He is called the one who sends light rays equally to all sentient beings in a limitless manner through his love, care, and great compassion. He is known as the one who possesses the mandala of the profound perfection of wisdom that is hard to gain and hard to behold. He is called the one who is like Brahma, the one whose path of a religious mendicant is exceedingly calm, and the one who is endowed with all the distinctive qualities of conduct on the path of mendicancy. He is the one with the supreme form beautiful to behold. He is the one with calm faculties, the one with the peaceful mind, the one who has perfected tranquility, the one who has obtained ultimate tranquility, the one who has obtained perfect discipline and tranquility, and the one who has perfected tranquility and insight. Concealed and with senses subdued, he is very restrained like an elephant. He is stainless, pure, and calm like a lake. He is the one who has fully abandoned all obscurations of habitual tendencies and disturbing emotions. He is endowed with the 32 marks of a great being. He is called the Supreme Being. His body is beautifully embellished with the 80 excellent signs. He is the foremost among men. He is the one with the 10 powers, the charioteer of those to be guided by the unexcelled being, who possesses the 4 types of confidence, the teacher, and the one who has perfected the 18 unique qualities of a Buddha. He is the one whose physical, verbal, and mental activity is beyond blame. He is endowed with all supreme aspects, and therefore is known as the one who has purified the surface of the mirror of wisdom, because he has realized equality in relation to dependent origination. He is the one who abides in emptiness, because he realizes the way of the ultimate truth. He is the one who abides in signlessness. Since he is unstained by any undertaking, he abides in wishlessness. Since he cuts the stream of all formations, he is not within the sphere of performance. Since his sphere of wisdom is not disturbed regarding the authentic limit, he is known as the one who speaks the truth, because he knows suchness, the realm of phenomena, to be like space, neither with nor without characteristics. He is neither with nor without characteristics. He is known as the one who unerringly teaches suchness and nothing else. Since he understands that all phenomena are like an illusion, a mirage, a dream, a reflection of the moon and water, an echo and hallucination, He is known as the one who realizes the teaching that is free of disturbing emotions. Because he produces the cause of passing beyond suffering, he is meaningful to see and to hear. Because he has the heroic capacity to guide sentient beings, he is called the one who strides with unerring steps. Because he has cut through ignorance and the craving for existence, he is known as the one who is free from weariness. Because he correctly teaches the liberating path, he is known as the one who has built the bridge. Because he is not sullied by any demonic activities and places, he is known as the one who has defeated the enemies of demons and disturbing emotions. He has genuinely transcended the desire realm, and therefore he is called the one who crossed the swamp of desire. He has genuinely transcended the form realm, and therefore he is called the one who has put down the banner of pride. He has genuinely transcended the formless realm, and therefore he is called the one who hoists the banner of wisdom. Because he is endowed with the Dharma body and the wisdom body, he is genuinely beyond all worldly concerns. He is called the great tree because he blossoms with precious wisdom of limitless qualities and is endowed with the fruits of liberation. He is called the one who is like the Udumbara flower because it is so rare for him to appear and be seen. He is said to be like the king of gems, the wish-fulfilling jewel, because he has genuinely fulfilled his aim of attaining nirvana according to the way.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would someone like to comment? What do you think about that?
May I start, Lance?
Please.
Um, I didn't have a pen and paper to take notes because I was reading, but somewhere I think of all these beautiful descriptions, one of them talks about his peacefulness.
Yes.
And so it reminds me of something I was reading. I was reading a book called Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac, some classical American literature, and I won't vouch for the theology in it or the, but one of the things he talks about, Kerouac talks about through his character, his celibacy, and that he's getting tranquility, he's getting peace from that because he's not distracted as a Buddhist. And it just occurs to me there are so many things we can chase after that aren't good for us. Um, I'm drinking tea instead of alcohol because it's better for me. It doesn't. So it's Buddhism and the peacefulness, the tranquility that comes with it, staying away from things that are bad for us. It just that's what resonated with me tonight reading that.
Yes. Very good. Yes.
Um, it
Alex?
is very uh, almost overwhelming to digest, but uh, there's probably a good purpose to enumerate all these qualities. But I'm trying to understand at least some of them, and one of them is mentions crossing the four rivers. And could anybody kind of give a clue of like what four rivers they're talking about here?
Yeah. Which verse was that?
Somewhere in the middle.
Well, I looked it up
Mhm.
in my, when I was studying this.
Okay, I found it. It's verse 132.
132?
Yes.
Right. Um, the four rivers, in India, there were four major rivers. So whether they were being invoked here, that this was that, or it was, being able to cross the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, those were things that came to my mind. I couldn't find a direct relationship. I even used AI to see if there was something that I could find that was a direct quote for that. But I did find that there were four major rivers, and that the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So
Interestingly, that you also were looking for those answers.
well, yeah, for myself, I don't want to speak too much right now, but yeah, I made a study of this. I go very, very slowly with this, and all the phrases and everything I look up in the glossary, and if I can't find it in the glossary, I go to other books and so on. So yeah, and most all these things that are listed here are things that we have studied, things that we've been introduced to. Many, many of these things.
Yeah.
Okay, this is purely a guess what crossing the four rivers means, but if I had to guess, I would think that there are four stages in the Hinayana to enlightenment. There's the stream enterer, the once returner, the non-returner, and the arhat. So perhaps those are the four streams that he crossed, but it's purely a guess on my part.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. How do you refer to the four stages of Hinayana?
Four stages of enlightenment in the Hinayana is the stream enterer,
Yeah,
the once returner, meaning you have one more life, the non-returner, meaning that you'll be reborn in one of the pure realms and then attain nirvana, and the arhat, who's not going to be reborn again. Just a guess, but that's the only four that seems to make sense in this context.
well, that's very good. I don't think that there's a badge that we get to put on our shirt or something like that with all of these things, like in the Boy Scouts or something.
Yeah, yeah, it could be a lot of merit badges. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But I think in samadhi those things are not necessary. We've overcome those things too. But it is useful to point these things out and to see these things and to recognize that these are our goals, our accomplishments. This is what it is to become enlightened in the sense of Buddhist Shakyamuni.
Actually, on the same theme, there is just before that, it mentions the knower, the one with the three types of insight. So, I mean, I can imagine there is,
Well, that is in the glossary,
yeah.
Okay, what
and
are
that's
they?
impermanence, suffering, and selflessness
Oh, great.
are the three types of insight.
Right.
The insight of impermanence, the insight of suffering, and the insight of selflessness.
Selflessness means like the empty nature of ego, basically.
Correct. Of oneself and of others.
Uh,
What would you say the three stains are?
Oh God, the three principal defilements, which are greed. Well, depending on your translation, passion, aggression, and ignorance. Sometimes they call it. Various translations. Those are the three stains.
That's correct, yes.
mm, mm.
So, another way of remembering it is the hub of the wheel of samsara. The three animals and representing the ignorance, the hatred, and the attachment, the desire, the three stains. Gunga, you have a comment about this?
Yeah, it just seemed like a catalog of many of the Buddha's teachings. One of the things that struck me early on when starting at 26.118 and then going through 26.120, where Buddha compared himself as being the different elements. He does not feel elated or depressed, and therefore he is known as the one similar to the earth, since he is unshakable. He is known like the king of mountains. He is known as the glory of the world because he possesses all the qualities of the world. Since he is clearly superior to the entire world, he is known as the one whose crown cannot be seen. He is called ocean-like because his profundity, and depth are hard to fathom. He is called the source of the precious Dharma because he has perfected all the precious teaching lead to awakening. He is said to be like the wind because he does not rest anywhere. He is known to possess a non-clinging intellect because his mind is non-clinging, unfettered, and liberated. He is called the irreversible Dharma because of his realization that penetrates all phenomena. He is known as the fire-like one because he burns away all disturbing emotions, having given up all pretense. And then he is like water because he is purified of evil and always has pure thoughts in a stainless body and mind. And then he is like the sky because he has actualized the wisdom of the realm of phenomena without center or edge within the range of non-clinging wisdom. There's another teaching by the Buddha, and it's referenced in a story that I talked about in a Dharma talk I gave a couple weeks ago, and it's called Shariputra's Lion's Roar. I think there's two with that title. It's like the second one, and Shariputra, the Buddha's disciple, is accused by another monk of knocking him down and not helping him up and not apologizing. And so he's brought forward to the Sangha and to explain himself. And in order to explain himself, he references this teaching and says that, he is like the earth, and, he's not unaffected by whether the good or bad things are put on him. And he's like the water. He's not affected. People wash dirty things in him. He's like the air. He can carry all fragrances, sweet or foul. He's like fire. He can burn all things as fuel. And so that reminded me of that teaching. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Actually, this also reminds me one of the teachings that lamas been given in the area, and they were about the 5 elements that our mind possesses, the quality of the 5 elements. And here is a reminder that Buddha, that certainly also possessed those and taught those and perfected those. So this is for us also to remind that that's something we need to be working on, I guess.
Yes, indeed. What are the 5 elements? What would you say the 5 elements of the world would be?
The earth, the water, the fire, the space. Those are the 4, right?
So it's water, earth, fire, wind or air,
wind,
space.
space.
And space.
Earth, wind, and fire are the easy ones.
Yeah. So are you guys familiar with, the term avatar?
Sure.
In cyber talk, I guess, it's, some kind of a name we use or something. I don't know. I was introduced to it through the Bhagavad Gita and through the writings, of the Hindu scripture and so on, the avatar. And I came to know it as like, the hero within ourselves. And isn't that, sort of what the avatar is supposed to be? It's sort of like an alter ego or something like that.
I mean, in cyberspace, it's just something that you put forward before people know you. They will know your avatar. They'll know the picture that you put forward to designate, are you a man, are you a lady, are you young or old, are you nerd or whatever. So something to give an idea of who you are about.
So,
A preview of yourself.
so that
Before
technology, the use of that technology has kind of co-opted, a concept, if you will, that, appears in, ancient scripture.
yeah.
You know, if do you have an aspiration at the least to become Buddha? And if you do, what would that look like? What would you want that to be? What does that mean to you?
I guess we just read all about it. In just a few words. But are you asking like everyone to elaborate?
I
Well,
think
just
that
anybody who wants to speak about it.
for me, that if we think about all these qualities, there are so many of them. It just reminds me of the fact that, human beings are a fluid combination of elements, the aggregates. They're constantly flowing and changing. So the Buddha is any one of these and all of these at any one moment. And you can't just say this one thing that's the Buddha, just like you can't say this one thing as any individual person, because the minute you name what they are, they've already changed to something different. They're constantly changing. Relatively, we can look at each other and we can say, oh, that's Pema Dorje, and that's Brendan, and that's Bernie, based on our faces. But that's just because of our the shortcuts that we take when we make perceptions, right? Because if I was really if I can only think of Pema Dorje as the person that looked exactly the same as they did last time we were online, it wouldn't be the same person. I wouldn't know who that was. But we just, simplify things. So it just has to look kind of like, enough like him so that I'll say it's the same person, not just on form. There's all those other parts going on, like our feelings and our consciousness, our formations, all those things are changing all the time. They're all presenting different aspects of themselves all the time. And that's what it makes me think about with this long list. There's all these different attributes of the Buddha, different parts of that are more important at different times, and he's all of them and he's none of them, simultaneously. You can't just pin it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan, I'd like to ask you because I know that you have a strong background in the Christianity and Catholicism and so on, and the hero of Jesus and so on. And how does this? How do you? I don't know if comparison is the right word, but how do you look at this? Thinking about what you were taught about Jesus.
Oh, so that's an interesting question. The attributes of the Buddha compared to the attributes of Jesus. And so we were taught the Holy Trinity, which is that Jesus is fully God and fully man, which sounds like a contradiction, but that's what we were taught. And so that being all powerful, all knowing, that these were all these were attributes of God, that Jesus therefore had. But I've never seen anything in the Christian scriptures that there's nothing in the Christian scriptures that goes into this kind of detail. I mean, we've got pages and pages and pages of attributes that are extremely beautiful and inspiring, reading them. This is probably the most beautiful sutra passage I've ever read. So there's nothing in the New Testament, wow, probably not even in the writings of the great saints or doctors of the church that would compare to this. Um, so
Do you think that it's a fair comparison to say that Jesus, at the very least was could be considered to be a bodhisattva on the path to becoming Buddha, and is it too far afield to be able to say that we are all God, that we can be God men, God women, God beings?
well, Lance, you sound a lot like one of my heroes, Alan Watts. So I'm not surprised because Alan Watts said something somewhat similar, which first of all he took issue with the Council of Nicaea in the mid 300s, in which doctrines like the Trinity were first articulated or first I don't know what the right word is. So that he made a distinction between Jesus the man versus all these things that were said about him or were to be believed about him 300 years later. And so, yes, that's something that Alan Watts has said, is that we're Jesus actually said the truth, which is that we're all God. Now, there's some fascinating possibilities that maybe in Egypt, Jesus had been exposed to some Buddhist ideas. I read a work of fiction where he spent 10 years of his missing years in a Buddhist monastery. I mean, it's fun to speculate. Who knows? But I mean, the Sermon on the Mount, there's quite a bit of Buddhism in the Sermon on the Mount, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just as many of these realizations in Siddhartha Gautama's life,
Mhm.
came more or less, we could say spontaneously or something, came out of his wisdom, out of his accomplishment from previous lives or whatever. And so the same thing could certainly be said to be true about Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah, I think that's fair that he was a great bodhisattva. I also think that Jesus had some different views. I think Jesus was very much caught up in that Jewish Palestinian culture, and so had a lot to say about Yahweh, about getting right with the Father, about the end is coming, things like that. Whereas the Buddha, I hate to get into like direct comparisons, and putting one religion against another, but I will just say positively. I think that it reminds me of something I read a while ago, which is that is the Buddha a god? And the answer is no. He's better than a god because he's enlightened. And so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, very good. I agree with that. That the gods are part of us in the same way that the meditational Buddhas are part of us, and that the absolute true nature that we talk about, that's the Buddha nature. That's what we call Buddha,
Yeah.
the awakened one. It's not specifically a human being or a transcendent human being. It's just an appellation that goes along with being awake.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say, because we were talking about Christianity just now, I began talking about, tea instead of alcohol and faithfulness to my wife instead of adultery. Now, alcohol is not the same as adultery, everybody. You can, but what I'm saying is, for me personally, it's better as a Buddhist and a human being to be even keeled like that rather than have the high highs, right? And then the lows and the crashes that I feel that I'm just called more to try to keep on an even keel. And Christianity would argue certainly that we should die to self, that we should give to others. I mean, there's certainly some similarities. Christianity would not find virtue in drunkenness or adultery either. Certainly wouldn't. But I feel that in Buddhism, I'm able to more skillfully avoid the things that are harmful to me and just have a perspective that is enlightening to me, that things are going to be okay, and that if they're not, it's okay anyways because I have the Dharma and the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and that was the realization that came in the preceding last time we talked about that. That was the realization of the five disciples, of the realization of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three bodies of the Buddha. Bernie, would you like to comment, because you're as well read, or for a long time as any of us here, and what does this this chapter and this section that we're reading, what does this mean to you in the face of all the study and the work that you've done to get to this point?
Well, it's this chapter, this section we just read is kind of overwhelming because it's so much in so many titles in each appellations, I guess you would call them, in each section. In this one section, would have to go through it very carefully uh, be to do it 100%, to do it precisely. It's it's certainly an interesting way to present the Dharma, to present it not as a set of teachings, but as a set of descriptions of the Buddha, which in turn means a description of what enlightenment is. Generally, the idea is, sometimes it gets said, that Buddhism really doesn't say much about what enlightenment is, because it's beyond description. But here we have a sort of boatload of descriptions of what enlightenment is. So it's from that standpoint, it's very interesting. But like I say, I really can't do justice to it because it's so detailed. With that, I can concentrate on one particular uh, appellation that's given to the Buddha, one particular title, but I really can't do justice to the whole long section.
Well, I don't want to be putting you on a spot that you don't feel comfortable in, but do you feel skeptical in any way about this?
Well, it's the whole kind of what, I don't know what word I want to use. It Mahayana scriptures tend to pile it on. It not just one thing, two things. Everything is just like I said. It's a big fancy wedding cake with lots of decorations on it, and that's just the nature of this kind of Mahayana sutra. So, and that, I wouldn't say I'm skeptical of it, but I view it from that point of view, that everything is described in a very hyperbolic and exaggerated way. Now, this isn't exaggerated in the sense like sometimes they say Buddha was under a banner, was under a parasol, and the parasol was 7 miles high, and all that, and a rain of flour fell to the earth to the depth of 3 feet. And that's the kind of description you sometimes get in these Mahayana sutras, and you understand the purpose of them, but you don't take them literally. Now, in this case, it's just piling on a lot of doctrine, a lot of titles in a short space, but I appreciate it, and I'm not really particularly skeptical about it. Now, if you ask me what is enlightenment actually like, I really can't say. There's the story is given, I believe, in words of our perfect teacher, where a frog is at the bottom of the well, and he thinks that the well is just like the great ocean. And a bird, I believe a stork, comes along, says, "Oh no, this is nothing compared to what the ocean is like." And he carries this frog from the well so that he can see the ocean. And when the frog sees the ocean, his head explodes, literally. And so it's like that. I've got absolutely no idea what enlightenment is like, but I'm sure it quite surpasses my ability to comprehend it. just taking something very simply like the LSD experience, which many people found so overwhelming, I can imagine how overwhelming the experience of enlightenment must be in comparison. But so that's the way I feel about it.
Well, thank you to you and to Kunga and Alex too, because to some degree or another we've been studying Dharma, and Brendan is has had more experience in the Christianity, but nevertheless it's the same idea. Does this give you cause, incentive to want to really dig in and really try and understand more of what this is? Do you feel a relevance to, your, lack of a better word, your progress in being able to become fully realized, to become fully at peace and so on? Is this a cause to that? Kunga, what would you say to that?
I would say that any time you can spend your moment just focused on the Buddha Dharma, that's good time spent. Um, and I think that these sutras that overwhelm your conceptual mind, I mean, that's the point. And I think we have to be careful about setting enlightenment experience up as some type of outer body experience that we can't experience, because certainly the Buddha experienced it as a being on earth, a being like we would say we are. And that just becomes a barrier. We can't know that experience till we have it. But if we set it up as something that's going to explode our brains, then maybe we'll never have it. It's just that we can't identify it, we can't conceptualize it. So it's tricky to realize that without creating a barrier for yourself so you can't realize it. Um, and I think that just surrendering yourself to the Dharma, not realizing that you're not always going to get it. Just let it, just receive it. Try not to attach with it. Try not to make it into some type of thing you can control or you can necessarily understand. Sometimes there's some benefits from that, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie, what do you think about that? Is it a it says here, in verse 115, it says that the Dharma is a gift. And do we accept that gift in, in sections? Do we accept it wholeheartedly and dive into it as much as we possibly can, or do we say, well, for this life I'm going to do this much of it, and however far I get, that's going to be what it is, and if there's something else that comes after this, well, I'll let that take care of itself.
Well, this is not from Buddhism, but this is from an infinite number of self-help videos that I've seen. And that's what they always say is don't be goal oriented, be process oriented, meaning you get to where you need to go by having confidence in the process, and your goal actually is to maintain the process, your practice every day, rather than having the goal out there being whatever it might be, having a usnisha on top of your head, a bump on top of your head, is it's being goal oriented is just not as helpful as being process oriented. So the point is you uh, don't chase after the goal. You just do the practice sincerely and wholeheartedly every day. And the analogy that comes to mind is one that's what in the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, it's like the railway the train rails that are parallel for 1,000 miles. That's not a literal quote, but that's the idea of the idea. You just have this straight idea that you just stick to the track, even though it's 1,000 miles long.
So in our tradition, would it be incorrect to say that the process is the Dharma path?
The Dharma path, yeah, the path of practice that you do every day, sure.
Alex, would you like to make a comment?
Sure. Whatever I can offer. It's dark here anyway, so I turn off my camera. I like this. I think we can think of all these passages as a stimulation to our mind and imagination of what it is like to become an enlightened being, and not just what it is like to be one, but also give some idea what do we need to do to become one. So there is like you can see that it's not just like being able to meditate for a week, sitting in one place and restrain yourself. There is much more to that. So there is a lot of work in all different aspects of our being that Buddha has worked in numerous lifetimes, and being king in different galaxies or whatever we can think of, different worlds, and among various kind of gods, and finally coming down on earth. And so we just a reminder that it's kind of like an elaborate process for each of us to go through. So we shouldn't be in a rush to get there. We should really take a lot of due diligence and develop all different aspects of our being, and then it all will somehow coalesce into experience of enlightenment. And of course, not just an enlightenment we're talking about, but like full, complete, irreversible enlightenment. There are many other little enlightenments, I guess, we'll encounter along the way. But like the final one is going to be some piece of work, to put it the least mildly.
All right. I like to thank you. I want to ask Brendan, but before I do that, I want to say something, and that is because Alex just brought up a couple thoughts, a couple things that came to my mind, and that is when we say enlightened, is that the same as awakened? Because from what I've learned and so on, that in Sanskrit, the word Buddha literally means awakened one, the awakened one, awakened. So the enlightenment comes from another word, or maybe Bernie can speak to this better than I can, but it's the same root word that is bodhisattva, the wholly enlightened mind, or, the four immeasurable qualities of a being who is on the path to become awakened. And somewhere along the line, it's gotten translated as enlightened. So I'll come back to Bernie and ask him about that. But conceptually, Brendan, what do you think about that?
The two words and how they're interrelated, or want to be a Buddha.
Yes.
Well, I'll tackle the one I feel more prepared for. Do I want to be a Buddha? And so the answer to that is Lance, you don't mind if I bring outside literature into this a little bit?
Well, of course not.
Was that our okay? Good. We call that apocryphal literature in Christianity. But anyways, so going back to Kerouac, right? There's a character named Jaffe Ryder, based on the real guy Gary Schneider, who was a Buddhist, Zen Buddhist. And when you read about this guy, he reminds me a lot of you, Lance. He is calm, fearless, friendly, learned, and he's in a lot of ways everything I am not, and everything that I feel like I need the Dharma so I can become more like that. So, because this is within me to be calm and fearless, but it's not somewhere I've been throughout most of my life. Let's just put it that way. And so, I would be happy right now in this lifetime simply for being some kind of stream enterer, or being a little bit like Gary Schneider, Jaffe Ryder, and but being a Buddha in this lifetime, I don't think I'm ready. I think I've got so much work to do on that. So that's my response.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, Bernie, this point of enlightenment, and being enlightened, being awakened, the essence of the root words of that, being Sanskrit. I mean, how would you comment on
That's
that?
an interesting question, and I believe I heard something about it once, but I cannot for the life of me remember right now. Enlightenment is sort of the Western translation. I don't believe that there's any equivalent to that in Sanskrit. Buddha and Bodhi come from the same root, and they both mean awakened. But enlightened is, of course, it's just another metaphor. It's like going from the darkness into the light, and light being a very traditional analogy for knowledge or wisdom in all traditions. So it makes sense. It's emphasizing the quality of wisdom. And awakened, of course, is a metaphor. It's like a dream, which is like an illusion, versus being awake, and which means you're being freed from illusion. So in the one case, the emphasis is on liberation from an illusion. In the other case, liberation from ignorance. So they both get to the same point. Somebody can correct me, but I don't believe there's a specific word in Sanskrit that could be translated literally as enlightened. I could well be wrong, but I can't think of one right now.
Well, that's my experience also. I mean, that's what I've heard, from teachers and so on like that myself, and through whatever limited study I've been able to put together for myself and so on.
Of course, the word enlightenment has a long tradition in the Western humanist tradition. So I assume that's where it comes from,
Right.
But I don't know otherwise.
One of the things that, my my whole endeavor, I guess you could say, with Dharma and so on, has been, realizing that here is a body of work, that has been documented so well and has so many aspects to it and so on, that describes the human condition and going up and going down and in and out and everything. It's so thorough, it's so great, but with that, there have been taken some literally some liberties. Some things of words have crept in, because of the vernacular of a particular time, of the particular translator or something like that, And so for myself, there's been a number of things where I've tried to clarify as much of that as I can in view of my own experience with it. What does it mean to me? Like take, for instance, the 8 auspicious signs. These 8 auspicious signs are said to have manifested upon the Buddha's enlightenment, upon his awakening. They just manifested and everybody could see them or something like that, you know. And I've looked it up in a few different places and I've found that there are different meanings for each of those different 8 symbols. There's 8 auspicious symbols and everything. And I thought hard about it and I thought, well, what does it mean to me? And to me, it meant that it was the success of the Eightfold Path of the Four Noble Truths. That each one of those 8 symbols had a direct interpretation that could be taken and used as this was the program, this was the method in which Siddhartha, you know, was able to follow this, and what resulted was his realization of his true nature, which he teaches us through the Dharma, that we can experience it ourselves and in our own terms and so on. He doesn't leave that out, that we can, it is for us to experience on our own. And your way is just as good as my way, you know. That was one of the first things I learned about Buddha, you know, two monastics or somebody getting together, or 2 different people from 2 different traditions, that my Buddha is as good as your Buddha. You know, and so that's always stayed with me. And the second part of that was that if you know one Buddha, you know all the Buddhas. Because knowing the Buddha, knowing that true nature, is that essence of the bodhicitta. The way that bodhicitta is expressed, the activity of that bodhicitta, is what differentiates what we say are these Buddhas, these meditational Buddhas, or these incarnate active Buddhas, or whatever, bodhisattvas, in the way that they are operating, in the way that they are living in the world and carrying out the Four Noble Truths, carrying out that wisdom of the Dharma. So that's how I look at it.
Lance, may I add something here?
Sure.
I for some time, on my path, I also struggled with these terms and what they may mean, and in themselves, or do they have any special meaning, or they're just synonyms? Enlightenment, awakening, liberation. And I think oftentimes they were used interchangeably, exactly as synonyms. But we can also view them as kind of stages on the path, I think. And I could give maybe an analogy which was mentioned about dreaming state. While we're dreaming, we may not realize we're actually dreaming. So that would be like our normal human confused state. But then in the dream, we may suddenly realize, oh, this is actually a dream. I'm dreaming, right? We're not awakened yet, but yet we realize that this is a dream. So that would be a kind of maybe a mini enlightenment that we have, because we now see things for what they are, like, but we haven't come out of dream yet. But then at some point we awaken. So now the dream is gone. We kind of see the reality. We awaken, but yet we are not free yet. We are not yet free to move. We become free when we actually get up and start taking action. So we're free from dream, and we are free from, condition that paralyzes us. We are no longer, the dream may be still in our memory, but the dream is no longer controls us, is no longer engages our mind. We are free from the condition of the dream. We now can make our own choices. We can do things. So that is like fully liberated state, as an analogy.
What about you said by taking action? What about taking the path of no action? In other words, not to take action for its own sake, to take action when it's required, when we deem it necessary or something, but at the same time to get to the point of relaxation and being able to abide in non-action.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it's of course getting a little bit in detail, like what kind of action is karmic action and what is not a karmic action. What is action more like reaction rather than true creative action, and what is passivity? Passivity is not really an enlightened action or non-doing either. Passivity is just laziness. And so-called non-action, something that doesn't create karma, something that keeps you in harmony with things that are around you. That is a little bit more fine concept to deal with, in my understanding.
Good point. Bernie, did you want to add something?
This is something, I want to say something about, because you'll find this in the Ganges Mahamudra as well. Of course, non-action is very much in Taoism, the Tao Te Ching as well. And after thinking about what it means for a while, I came to the conclusion, or at least I have the opinion, that what it means is that no deliberate action, rather one acts spontaneously and not according to some preconceived plan. And I would have to say that in all my years of meditation practice, the change that's happened, that's most obvious to me, is I no longer think about what I'm going to say before I say it, which you would think would get me into a lot of trouble. But actually, when I try to rehearse what I'm going to say, it comes out poorly. And when I just open my mouth and start talking, it really comes out much better. So that's how I believe that the action of an enlightened person is like. They don't act from a deliberate plan, they act spontaneously, but this spontaneous action, because it's not planned, actually is much wiser than a planned action would be.
Well, I resonate with that. And let me ask you something. Do you find yourself speaking, what seems to be literally from your heart center rather than your brain?
Well, like I say, it's not pre-planned, so it's not thought out. I don't specifically think it comes from the heart, but where it comes from, I always think of it as coming from the unconscious, the deeper level of the mind. People don't realize that 90%, it's the mind is like an iceberg. It's 5/6 of an iceberg is under water and only 1/6 is above it. The same way, your wisdom doesn't really come so much from your unconscious mind as from your unconscious mind. And when we're able to overcome that barrier between the two, we're actually able to be a much wiser person than we were before. I think artists are more likely to understand that, because when a writer writes, it comes out much better when they just write spontaneously. I was reading the other day, somebody said, well, the character I was writing in my story just started telling me what was going to happen. Now, of course, that was that author's unconscious mind, but if you try to force something, if you try to do it according to a plan, it's not going to be as well done as if you just open your mind and listen to your unconscious. It's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, no, that certainly does resonate with me, and I know, writers who, take a very long time to write something that seems to be quite short on one page of paper, but meanwhile, it's taken them years to do it because they were waiting for another, lack of a better word here, another heartfelt inspiration that they
Well,
could articulate and put on the paper rather than something that they can construct out of their brain. And it's like throwing a brick into the water or something like that when you do it with your brain instead of pouring water into water from your heart center. What we might call creativity or something like that should, I experience is coming from the heart center. Well,
so
I think the purpose of what we've been talking about and the purpose of this part of the chapter and everything is to allow ourselves to give ourselves permission to dig into this and to study this and to contemplate this, to listen, to contemplate, to practice, to contemplate some more, and then to have the meditative experience. And the meditative experience is like the dream in the sense that you don't realize that you're dreaming until after you come out of the dream. And the same thing with the meditation. You don't realize that you're in the meditation until you come out of the meditation. So my point is to allow ourselves to use the process for that, to get to that point, and then have that experience, what some people might say an out-of-body experience or something, I think that's overused, I imagine, but I think that there is a true experience of the meditation, and it is, the non-conceptual. You can't communicate that to somebody else except through bodhicitta, through loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It has to be a combination. It has to be that. It has to be bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind, and I always think of that as the heart mind.
Well, Len, I just want to say that once in a while I actually happen to experience this kind of connection between heart and mind where I feel that both are kind of intimately linked with each other and they act as a unity. And sometimes you feel it's disconnected, but the best days of my life, or hours, more like, or even minutes, is when you feel that connection, and I think that's what they mean by heart mind, when that connection is strongly present and there is no duality there. So meditation, I think, helps us quiet down the mind a little bit so the heart can get through, and then there is this bi-directional communication. And actually, speaking physically, there is a nerve that actually goes between heart and brain and internal organs, and it carries as much information from the heart to the brain as the other way around. So I think it's called vagus nerve.
That's the vagus nerve.
Yes, and it's been actually recently studied by Brain Initiative quite a bit, how it all relates to our being. But yeah, I think it's not just our mental construct. I think there is some physical reality into that as well.
Bernie, going back to what you said, when you're in that kind of a conversation, with someone or a group or by yourself, is there a feeling of virtue, of truth, of is it something that sort of arises out of you, and do you have trust in that? Um, have you noticed it? Do you think of it
Well,
that way?
that would be a bit much to say that I feel virtuous or especially truthful. Sometimes I just listen to what I'm thinking and I say, oh, well, that's well said. I wonder where that came from, you know. Or I go back, or more often I go back and read something which I wrote down and I think, did I really come up with that? Where did that come from? But in the moment, generally I just talk, you know, and I don't think about it being good or bad or whatever. Uh, what was the other point I wanted to make? I don't know. Uh, maybe my memory's failing me these days, especially for names. Uh,
Well,
yeah,
we'll come back to you.
okay. Well, okay, just the point is that it's not so much a special feeling. It's a very typical feeling. I guess it felt special at first, but then it becomes the new normal. That's the way these things generally work. So, other than that, if that was your original question, was there a second part to your question that I'm not remembering correctly?
Well, we're just trying to get to the point of, was it a heartfelt, expression or wisdom or some feeling or something like that that, is rising
Yeah.
up as opposed to something that was purely,
Well, that's
psychological,
now
mental.
I remember what I wanted to say. You find well, it's not so much talked about these days, but they used to talk about being in that flow state where you do something and it just sort of flows out of
Like
you
a
and you're
stream of
not.
consciousness.
The flow state is what the word they used to use when they talked about it. When they're originally talking about meditation, a lot of people said the purpose of meditation is to get into that flow state. Now, especially, it was used, especially in the context of athletes, because in athletics or probably any other physical pursuit, if you overthink what you're trying to do, you're going to choke. So being in the flow state is just being in the state
In
where
the
you're not
zone.
overthinking things anymore.
They say in sports analogy, they say being in the zone.
In the zone, yeah, in the zone was the other phrase that was used. I imagine it's the same thing in being a musician too. You just play, and if you just thought about what you were going to do, it would just kind of seize you up. So I think anything physical like that, you can overthink and try to over control what you're doing, and you just have to let it go and be natural. And so, of course, that's what it feels like being in some kind of flow state or being in the zone when you really feel that you're connecting like that. And I'm certainly can't say I happens 100% of the time. Sometimes I sit down and I want to write something, and it's just not there. I just can't make it come out. But the other times it just seems to come out naturally and spontaneously. And I don't think it's any great thing. I think everybody has access to that and to one degree or another. So, but I do think that the practice of meditation kind of enhances that kind of thing.
Yes, thank you. Kunga, I'd like to ask you because you're a teacher and you've been in the Dharma for a long time now. And how does this, what do you think of what Bernie and and Alex were just talking about?
I think we're kind of talking about being able to interact outside of your normal ego that you identify as yourself, being act in a way that's not associated with you projecting onto things how you would like them to be or not like them to be. Trying to act, being able to act with reality as it happens as opposed to how you want it to happen or how you feel like it should happen or how you're projecting it to be happening. Sort of being able to live in that moment without those ego blinders on, I guess. That and just trying to get beyond that sense of a self that doesn't really exist.
Do you
Athletes, I think it's easy for the athletes to do it because they're involved in the activity and they've trained themselves for this automatic type of behavior, and then it just becomes all physical. I think it's more difficult when you're engaging in an activity that requires you to think more, requires thoughts. It's easy when you're just running or playing music and stuff. You just, your brain is not really, that part of your thinking brain is not really involved so much. But when you're maybe dialoguing with people or teaching, it's more of awareness, trying to be open to what they're trying to say and not project on them what you think they mean and all those things. More complicated, I guess. Thank you.
So, do you have experience of, like, for lack of a better word, a stream of consciousness or something like that, and that sometimes awakened thoughts, kind of arrive to you, or the way you're able to turn a phrase from time to time that speaks to that heartfelt connection that it's intellectualized, but at the same time the from where it came from, the essence of it satisfies the heart.
I think today I was just talking with the family who has we have a family member in the Hansen Center. She had a fall last week. She had dementia, which is moderate, but she had a fall, and sometimes when people have dementia who have a fall, they don't recover from it. They x-rayed her. She had no fractures, but it's still a severe trauma. So today I went to see her, and she was in 5 days respite. The hope was that she would go home when she went in, but right away, within a couple of days, she wasn't really eating, wasn't really getting out of bed, wasn't sleeping most of the time. So we thought maybe things were declining. Today, she's not awaking at all. She's not able to drink any fluids. She's not able to respond to family. She's just open mouth breathing. It's very much terminal. And so I had to talk to them about what was going on and try to be supportive of them, see what they understood, and give them a sense of what they might be expecting going forward. And I didn't really have to think about it. I've done that. I've had that kind of conversation with people before, so I could just react to where they were and find out, what they knew and try and be supportive of their concerns that they have. I felt really good about that. I didn't have to think about what I was going to say. I could just interact with them at that level. And it was very compassionate. It was very much, empathizing with what they were going through and trying to provide the support that they were asking for, and be very attuned to what they were needing, not trying to assume that they wanted to hear a certain thing or understood a certain thing, just trying to figure out what was there for them. And we had to do a lot of things. We had to do that. We also had to talk about financial stuff. We had to get things applied for that were more, related to just the nuts and bolts of, having someone stay at some place where they don't have any money to pay for being there. But I thought we covered everything well. And that's a tricky conversation because you have to cover so many different parts of someone's life in a short period of time in a very stressful situation with a lot of different people who have different relationships and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I feel good about that in my job. When I have experiences like that, I feel like that's part of my experience as being a social worker. That's part of being a Buddhist practitioner. It's part of, being able to be there for people and be supportive just because of what I've learned through meditative practices. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Brendan, how about you? In your background and the things that you've done and in conversations and I imagine, as well versed as you are in some of the scripture and everything, that you've been called upon to be a teacher, one type, or did you find excuse me, a certain natural flow that you kind of get into that zone and being very comfortable in that and so on.
Well, I think that Tonga makes an excellent point, because he talked about how this is what he does in his job is have conversations like this. So I think that there's one thing I've noticed, and that research bears it out, that the best way you can avoid fear is by having done something previously and having got. So I'll give you an example. I host a monthly webinar series as part of my job, and we have live speakers, live virtual speakers. Once in a while, they have technical problems with their Zoom, and there's just all kinds of things that can go wrong. And I used to really panic every time I'd go into the office for one of these broadcasts. It was a big source of anxiety. And now at this point, I've seen pretty much anything that can go wrong. I've learned how to solve for it in advance. And we had one thing really bad happen a couple of years ago, and I still work there. I've survived that. So, yeah, I think that just having experience, right? Having been there, done that helps a lot as well. And certainly there's a flow involved in that as well. If you know what you're doing, you just get good at it and you can communicate more effectively. I'm not where Bernie is yet. I still have to think about what I'm going to say a bit more before I say it. But yeah, and with writing, I write sometimes for my job, not very often, but magazine articles occasionally in the past. And yeah, definitely what Bernie said. I mean, there's two different parts of your brain, and you never try to edit while you're writing. You write and then you edit. Otherwise, you're just going to spin your wheels. So I think that's related as well.
I just like to say for myself, years ago when I went out into the business world, and I had been a technician for many years, working on a bench, maintaining and fixing things, and then I went into the sales part of things and project management. And, I was meeting people, who were people that had means and people who were successful and so on like that. And I started kind of writing, a script for what it was I wanted to say. And there was a few times, in the beginning where I stayed with the script, and it was very uncomfortable. It was very awkward and so on. And what I learned to do was to spend time making the script, get my notes down, get my points out, my talking points, get them out and just leave them as bullet points on a piece of scrap paper somewhere. And I found that things flowed much better. And I could check my notes to say, oh, did I get to that point or something? Or, wow, I checked all those things. I did all those things that I wanted to do and so on. So, but the real point was that there was a natural flow to it. It was very conversational. And that's one of the things that, I try and do, even what we're doing now is to be as conversational about it. I don't have too much of a plan, and I just let it all unfold. And it's worked out really well, I think, for everybody. And so I've been very grateful for that and being able to discover that and use that.
It's the Buddhist interdependence, right, Lance? We all bring different life experiences and perspectives and information. So that's the beauty of it. We all have something to offer.
And I think that's the purpose of our coming together for these discussions and everything, and to look at the equality of all of that, and just, because sometimes somebody will say something and the next day or the next week I'll think about that. It'll pop in my head and I say, well, what did he mean when he said that? What was that? And it becomes part of, my thought process. It becomes part of my repertoire, so to speak. Oh yeah, that really did make sense in the way that was expressed. So absolutely, and maybe there's some times when we're sharing like that. I
Brendan,
think
I wanted to, sorry, I would already
no, please go.
interrupt you.
Yeah,
I wanted to share you're talking about, the worst things happen and you stayed at your job. I always think when the worst things happen, I always think, wow, there's never going to be anything happen that bad. I've got so much ground covered here by experiencing that. Like one time I got called, I wasn't even on call, but I got called at 11 o'clock to go in to support a patient, well, support a patient's family because the patient had blown themselves up and burned their house down, killed themselves and the person that was in the room with them, and left their daughter and their daughter's significant other homeless, and they were all in the ER and they needed support. And I was like, what? And I was there till like 2 a.m. in the ER trying to support them. And after that, I was like, can't imagine anything that would be to that extreme. It's just like makes you feel like, well, I can, nothing's going to be that bad. Everything else is going to be a little shadations or something less severe. Nothing to worry about. Of course, there is something else come up and it's really crazy in a different way. So there's always you never had the most challenging situation, but it seemed like it always whenever I encounter one of the really challenging situations, I just come away from it thinking, wow, that was pretty amazing experience. I'd never thought I would have something like that. I probably won't have anything like that again. I can't imagine there anything as challenging as that. Of course, there will be, but it's still, it just keeps you kind of going forward.
So, can you imagine yourselves being Buddha, having a profound experience and feeling the necessity, the importance of sharing that, but not exactly knowing how to do it, but just keeping yourself present and allowing it to just unfold itself? Because I think that's what we're reading. I think that's what the sutra in particular is about. And I think if we could have the conversation with Shakyamuni Buddha, he would say something like that. He'd say, well, I'm just here and it just flows. I'm just becoming, part of that flow. Because I don't think he sat down and tried to organize all these thoughts and write them all down, to be able to have for his disciples, or even forget that for a moment, because it's 300 years later when this was written, when this sutra was written. And, so those people then were trying, to whatever degree they were successful, and to channel Shakyamuni Buddha, and saying, well, what would Shakyamuni Buddha be doing in this situation 300 years ago? So I think there's a lot to be said about that, putting yourself in that situation and just letting it flow.
Yeah, every situation is going to be different. You're never going to have the same situation twice. I think that's one of the things that like we're pointing to is it's everything is flowing, everything is impermanent, all your experiences are impermanent. Getting away from the idea that you're going to learn something that you can apply to another experience which is appropriate because you think the next experience is going to be the same is just a delusion. There are always new experiences. It's only going to be similar to what you learned before. You always have to take into account this new experience and approach it with a new way. It might be related to the old way, but it can't be the same way because it's a different experience.
Do you think it's all psychological? Or is there, that spiritual, heartfelt component to it?
Well, we're just labeling different things different ways. I don't think the Buddha would say there was any difference. We want to design them as different. Like we want to say, oh, the intellectual is bad and the heart is good. But really, it's just different words based on your perspective on putting the energy out there. So,
well, that's very wise that you said it that way.
yeah.
That's very wise. Alex, would you care to comment about any of this?
Yes, I mean it's great to talk about those matters. And there was Taoism mentioned And I'm a student of Tai Chi, and when you read Tai Chi lore, Tai Chi classics, they actually classify actions in for like physical motions in a very peculiar way, like action, reaction, whatever. And the most refined and the most kind of elevated type of action, they call it a live action or alive action. And that is something that, as was said, uncontrived, spontaneous, and really, created in the present moment, how it is done and how it is directed and all that. So not any kind of special technique, not any kind of special trick, but that one and the only kind of perfect action that can be done in particular situation. So, and that's what is part of the, I guess, a manifestation of enlightened mind, where there is, it's not operated based on preconceived ideas or fixed concept, or some kind of plan A, plan B, plan C, but something that encompasses the whole situation holistically, and providing guidance or whatever is needed in that particular situation. Harmony in inside and outside. So it's certainly great. Those are very great topics to think about and discuss here. We may have thought of this on our own here and there, but it's good. It's good to have experiences, to share experiences like Kunga said, for example. Wow, I never thought that all those things can ever happen, but they do. So yeah, great sharing today.
Thank you. Yes. Bernie, would you like to have anything else to say?
I don't think I have anything more to add at this particular point of time. I think I've said everything I know already. If something occurs to me, I'll chime in.
Okay. Brendan, would you like to? Because we're almost, I think we all just end here, unless somebody has something to say. Brendan, would you like to add anything?
I have a question, well, statement for Conga. First of all, thank you for reading that part of the sutra again, because I had missed. He is called ocean-like because his profundity and depth are hard to fathom. I don't know how I missed that when I was reading it, but that's so beautiful. Jane's Addiction, one of my favorite bands, has a song called Ocean Size that reminds me of that. So that was a good tie-in. Anyways, my question for Conga is, what you just described with the house blowing up and the fellow committing suicide, if I had your job, I would have a serious case of PTSD. So my question is, when, I hate to think of children being harmed or being orphaned. It really bugs me and really makes me sad. And I put myself in their shoes, and it's hard to deal with for me. So, like, how do you deal with that as a Buddhist and as a person, mentally, to get beyond that, and how do you process dealing with those kind of situations? Edify me, please.
I don't know. I know I'm doing everything I can to support them before the event had happened. I mean, it wasn't a suicide. They were just smoking with their oxygen on,
Okay.
which, you can't do. They had some confusion. They had done it before, but they had denied it. And, and we've had people burn themselves lots of different ways of smoking with their oxygen. I just can't seem, that's a hard one for people to get a handle on. But I have had a suicide patient, he was never suspected. He was living in an apartment, and his sister bought him a house so he could move into. He moved into the house. All his stuff that was in storage got moved into the house, and he had a gun in storage. And he decided he at the point where he couldn't do it anymore because of his cancer. He had like throat cancer, and he couldn't swallow anymore. He's having a hard time talking. I don't know. I don't I don't blame myself, for what they've decided on. I think there's many different causes and conditions coming into play that make someone act in a different way. I know that when I'm with them, I'm doing everything I can to support them, but sometimes the karma from their past is just the karma it is, and it doesn't matter what I do. I can't change what's where things are leading up to. I get, if I think about it a lot, I just spend a lot of time doing metta, for them, wishing them suffering, wishing them relief from suffering, during my practice. If someone who thinks about it, ruminate on it, then whenever I ruminate on them, I just kind of wish them, freedom from suffering. If they passed on, it doesn't really matter. I still just, if they're my thoughts, I'll just try and wish them positive feelings, relief from suffering, whenever I think about them as a way to deal with that. Yeah.
You do all you can. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, I hope that you all feel compelled to want to read and study this more, because I think this whole chapter, I mean, the whole sutra is fantastic, but this chapter in particular, I think is so important because it is, expressing the gift of Dharma from the point of view of Shakyamuni Buddha. So it's really profound, and maybe we don't have time to do it today or tomorrow, but maybe next week or next year, or after we retire or something like that. But these are priceless gifts that we have here, and to get involved with them as much as you can when it's practical for you, and so on.
Kevin Doja, can I share on one more line here before we leave?
Certainly.
26.138.
0.13?
0.138.
138.
Yeah. He is like the moon, the one that beings never tire of beholding, the one with brilliant light that reaches everywhere, the light that grants friendly disposition and great delight, the light that sees all sentient beings face to face, the one that shines on the minds and thoughts of all beings so that they appear exactly as they are. The great array, the one surrounded by the stars of those who learn and those who no longer learn. I like the idea there because the moon, we see the moon because of reflected light, right, from the sun. There's this interesting idea of the Buddha being like a being that shines everyone's light back on them. I mean, he even says that. He says, the one that shines on the mind and thoughts of all beings so that they appear exactly as they are. So that just idea that we could somehow be mirrors for other beings, and reflect back the way they actually are versus, being projecting on them who they should be or who they are, who we think they are, how they should act, all those things. So that just struck me. Thank you.
Indeed, yes. For us to deal with our habitual tendencies, we have to recognize them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our unconscious biases.
That's certainly one of the more beautiful passages here. Good to point it out.
All right, well then we'll call it an evening. We'll do our dedication prayer. We'll do the Dekurma prayer. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you next week.